What's up guys, I'm Dean and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I thought I'd do another ranking series, a series where I rank a series, and this series is me ranking the series of John Wick. Why are my intros so confusing? Okay, let's talk about the John Wick franchise before we get into it and my relationship with it before we get into the ranking. I saw John Wick 1 back in 2020 and that was the first time I ever saw any of these films, and I didn't really like it. If I'm being honest, I wasn't a big fan of it. I've never been the biggest fan of this all-action cinema because it kind of just lacks the depth and the emotion that I look for in my favourite films and the relationship between characters. And I never really saw that in John Wick, and I wasn't the biggest fan, so I never watched the rest. When all the good reviews came in for John Wick 4 at the start of this week, I thought, I'm going to have to give this a look. So I've spent the last week, like over the course of 2 days, I watched all 4 John Wick films, and my opinion has changed. We're going to get into that, but let's just rank these films. From an outsider, someone who's never really cared for this franchise before, this is my ranking of the John Wick films. In 4th place is John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. This film is automatically the worst one because for some reason they decided to give this film a subtitle but none of the others. That's a joke. That's not why I think it's the worst. But it does annoy me that this one has a subtitle. Each of the other 3 John Wick films, 1, 2 and 4, I think are the best at particular aspects of telling this John Wick story. And I'm going to get into the specifics of that when we get to the individual films. And this film doesn't really have that for me. This film doesn't have, John Wick 3, that's the amazing film where this happens. Because, yeah, sure, the action's great. But the action's great in all these films. And yeah, sure, John Wick's a fun character to be with. But, yeah, he's a fun character to be with in all these films. But, I mean, as I watched these films, as I went on, I understood them more and more. That doesn't mean I think they got better and better, obviously. But I understood them more. And in this film, what really stood out to me is how these films are just incredibly violent slapstick comedies. Like, I think it's a really intelligent form of comedy where funny things happen during fights, and there's some kind of dark, twisted humour to it all. And then at the end of the fight, when John Wick is in a room full of dead bodies, he doesn't say a little quip like you would expect from a James Bond film or a Marvel film or something like that. And I appreciate that kind of the more subtle kind of comedy that kind of took me a bit to tune into. I think there's a great moment in John Wick 3 when he just keeps getting smashed into glass case after glass cabinet, and I think that scene in itself is really funny, and I think the physicality to it is funny. But the plot itself, if we're looking at the overall John Wick plot, apart from Victor's betrayal, if you cut John Wick 3 out of the story, there'd be no difference between John Wick 3 and John Wick 4. Because at the start of John Wick 3, John Wick's on the run and he's got this massive bounty after him and he's betrayed the High Table and nobody likes him. And then he's in the same place at the start of John Wick 4. The only difference is that Victor lost the hotel and he was in trouble with the High Table by the end of John Wick 2 anyway. So you could have just skipped that. And like John Wick 3 to me feels like a bit like a needless film in the plot of John Wick. And I understand these films aren't about plot, but because that's what I'm used to and that's what I like in film, that's what I'm looking for. In 3rd place, we have the first John Wick film. I really enjoy how simple this film is. And I think like the lore behind a lot of this table stuff can get too complicated the further into the series we go. But here, it's just one man against the Russian mob, and I think that really, really works. I think what this film does best, which I alluded to earlier on, is the emotion and the emotion behind John Wick's character, and I think that's really excellent here. I really like the scene where he talks about what the dog that his wife gave him meant to him and how he's back in the business or back in the game or whatever. And I think there's some really solid action, and I just really enjoy the simplicity of this film and the runtime. It's the shortest film in the John Wick series of like 90, 100 minutes, something like that. And I think for an all-action film like this, that runtime really works unless your film is so great it's deserving the longer runtime. Am I alluding to something? Who knows? I think this film does take itself a lot more seriously than the later films, which I'm not a massive fan of, and I think some of the action is toned down in like its absurdity, and I don't really like the serious nature of it, so that's why it's in third place instead of higher up, because like with the runtime and with the emotion, this film's great. It's just those elements of it I'm not the biggest fan of. In second place we have John Wick Chapter 2. This film, I think, is kind of the perfect balance of a simple plot, not overcomplicating the lore of the world and the universe it's set in, while still having really solid action, really inventive action, and really fun character moments. What this film does best, I think, is the world building and the world that John Wick inhabits the best. I really, really love the series of scenes when he gets to Rome and he has to go to the armourer, and he has to go to the tailor, and he has to go to all these different shops, and you meet all these eccentric different characters, and then I enjoy just his back and forth with some of the other characters in this film. I think this film has the best world building of the series, and because it keeps it simple, it keeps it mysterious, but it doesn't overcomplicate things and it doesn't over-explain things. And I think that's really great. And I think some of the action here is phenomenal. I mean, I keep saying that the action is phenomenal in all these films, and to be honest, I think the action does get better and better as this series goes on, as we're going to get into. But John Wick 2 is a fun time. I think the plot is simple enough. It's just and the ending. I think all these films kind of end. I think this film has the best ending out of the original three. I think the first ending is natural and you know, it works perfectly well as an ending. I think the ending of the third film is a bit abrupt, but the ending of this film is just nice and easy, and I think it leaves us on a nice cliffhanger without ending the story too abruptly. In first place, we have John Wick 4. What to say about this film that hasn't already been said? Some of the action in this film is amongst the best action I have ever seen in my life, and I think this is redefining a genre from my perspective in a lot of ways, because all I know this could be like, I know there's a lot of foreign action films which I haven't got into, and that this style of action that I'm not experiencing, so I can't really say, oh, this is like the first time this stuff's been done, because maybe it hasn't, but to me it's the first time I've seen it, and it opened my eyes to a world of films I haven't thought of before. This film's 2 hours 50 minutes long, and I think easily 2 hours 15 minutes, 2 hours 10 minutes of this film is just action scenes, and that, to me, doesn't sound great. But when you watch the film, it is bloody incredible. What I think the John Wick's films have been missing above all else is a proper villain, and Bill Skarsgård, I think it's Bill, I get the Skarsgårds confused, is just as the face and as a force for the High Table, I think works brilliantly, because the High Table doesn't work great as a villain because it's vague and there's no one there representing it apart from like the boring person in John Wick 3. But here, you have Bill Skarsgård, who is great. He is menacing, he is powerful, he is threatening, but also he's a bit like a spoilt brat, and I think he has enough personality to make him a real memorable addition to this series, apart from the fact that, you know, he's dead. The gunfight in Paris is one of the best action scenes I've ever seen in my life, when it's all one shot and the camera is going over the cutout of the building. What it must have taken to get this shot, this scene to work, and this single shot to work, with all those pyrotechnics and stunts and everything happening in perfect unity, when like they probably couldn't see each other because there were so many walls in the way, is phenomenal, and it blows my mind. And I think this is the real highlight of the film. It is just a mind-blowing scene. I've never seen anything like it. And then you follow that scene up with the scene where he has to get all the way to the top of the stairs. I think is great. I think this, when he fights his way to the top of the stairs, I think that's really cool. And then when he gets to the top and he gets pushed back down, it's great comedy. I think that's really funny, and I think that is like the kind of style of comedy this film works for. I think this film did have a few too many quips. I think this film did have quips from people like Mr. Nobody, which you don't usually get in these films, and I think that was great. And just him falling down those stairs, it got me. Like, the shot went on for just the right amount of time for it to be like, this is going on for too long, this is funny and dumb, and then he falls down it again. It's great. I think, I can't remember the character's name, the blind guy, who also plays a blind guy in Rogue One, who is also a fighter, like, it's a weird coincidence, is great. But this film is just phenomenal. The action is unlike anything I've ever seen. My eyes have been opened. John Wick, I'm looking forward to the rest of this franchise. The Japanese stuff at the start was incredible as well. That's my ranking for John Wick. It goes 3, 1, 2, 4 from worst to best. Thank you for watching. Tell me your John Wick ranking down below and why I'm wrong for not liking the John Wick franchise from the outset, because people are very upset whenever I say that. So please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.